Sarah Dexter, Managing Director at Oil, it's part of the Lowe and Partners group, asks this pertinent question: why clients all too often don't share data with their agency counterparts. Welcome. Thanks very much for talking to us, Sarah. You make this interesting point. The advertising professional has become devalued over time, a loss of meaning, in other words. That's quite an indictment, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. And I think the very sad thing is probably a lot of us in the industry have brought it on ourselves. And I think just the dynamic has changed of advertising over the years. You know, advertising is not what it was 30 years ago.
And all of this is quite sad in the increasingly important age of data-driven advertising. So let's look at that sharing dynamic if we can. A couple of points. The one is obvious security concerns.
Definitely. But I mean, my point is always, first of all, as a person, do you trust me ethically? And actually, if you don't, you probably shouldn't be working with me. Secondly is, who am I going to share the data with? And why would I share the data with anybody else? And also, in this day and age, with the internet and all kinds of things, if you really want to find data, you can probably find it.
How does this put a brand at a disadvantage in its relationship with the advertising agency?
I think, in my mind, the more brains you have to solve problems and to look for opportunities, the better. So if you see your advertising team as an extension of the brand team, then if your brand hits a snag, you have more people that know about it early on and maybe can see it coming and try and intervene. And in the same way, if the brand's doing very well, how do we capitalise on it? How do we move it forward? And I think if there's a really big gap between client and agency, you just don't get that. It's always reactive.
Sarah Dexter, you're not one step ahead of the curve, though, because often these brands have the data, but they simply don't know that they have it, first of all, and secondly, how to share it and whom to share it with.
Yes, I mean, I think with a lot of brands, particularly the very big brands, people are overwhelmed with data, and sometimes exactly that. You don't know what you have, and which is even more reason to possibly share it. So we encourage our clients and say, don't worry about sifting it. Give it to us. Let's go through it. Let's see if we can see the wood for the trees. And often the answers are in there. Well, you have to interpret it, obviously, but it's there already. Are
people getting better at the interpretation of that data? It's a big issue in your industry.
I think it probably depends on who you're asking to do. So a planner, a strategist, for example, should have that skill set.
But it's predicated on a new skill set as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, you need to, I think all too often people think, oh, there's data, it's numbers, or it's feedback, and they pass that on. And that's really not useful to anybody.
All right, pull this into a mini case study for us if you can. Then you work on a brand called Slowmag. How have you made that direct correlation between the importance of data and what you've done for this brand? So
what has been fantastic about this client relationship is since we won it about 3 years ago. And from day one, we've always been part of the team with the marketeers. And so we literally see all the data from distribution, so we know what's happening in pharmacy versus what's happening in retail. We understand out of stocks, we understand margins. So if you have different variants on shelf, actually what do we want to push? Clearly the one with the higher margin. We need to know which one that is. And over time, it's just been an ongoing conversation. And we've been lucky enough also to create some of that data. We've done a lot of habits and attitudes research. And we just build and build and build. So our knowledge over time just keeps moving forward.
So in conclusion then, what's the big lesson here for marketers in managing that relationship with the agency in terms of data share? Where would you start?
First of all, ensure you have a partner that you trust and that you believe actually can do something. Don't give data to someone who is going to file it, because that is a waste of time. But make sure you're happy with that relationship. Make sure that person or people have got the skill sets, and keep the dialogue open all the time.
But surely as well, it's knowing what you want out of that data, which I think is also a problem sometimes. It's there, but you know, what specifically do I need out of this? And what conclusion am I going to draw?
But I think there are two approaches. One is what do I want out of it, and one is just having an ongoing knowledge of what's happening. Because actually, if your brand is in decline and you only really pick it up and alert the agency to that maybe a year on, it's often a bit too late. So if a lot of eyes are on the data, watching movements in the data, understanding what's going on, it can be rectified or, like I say, made an opportunity of.
The changing face of strategy in brand building. Sarah Dexter, MD Oil, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.